So why don't we start with John Baudet, and you just say your name, college, major, industry, and something meaningful.
Thanks very much, Sean. Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today. It's been a long time since I've been up, certainly in this room. But as Sean said, my name is John Baudet, and I'm going on 45 years. I think next year we have our 45th reunion coming up. After I left St. Mary's, I attended Villanova University, and then from there I studied accounting and went on to take the CPA exam, but never with the intent really to stay in accounting. For the last 35 years, I've been in the beverage industry, many years working for PepsiCo up in their headquarters in Westchester, and then for the last about 28 years, I've been in the wine, spirits, and beer side. So as I look out in the room, I see there's certainly we have multicultural folks here. We bring products in from about 85 countries around the world. It might be vodka from Russia, it might be cachaça from Brazil, cognac from France.
One of the goals at our company is to help bring those products here so that people can experience some of the homeland. I have 4 children. Unfortunately, none of them got to go to St. Mary's just because of where we lived and so forth. But I'm a big fan of this school, and you're all sitting in a very good place. It's a great school, and from here I think you'll want to do some wonderful things. I will point out one real quick thing. In 1972, I was actually here and got on a bus and went to see Richard Nixon, who was running for re-election. And if you think it was chaotic now with the president we have, trust me, it was pretty wild back then. Shortly after we went to see him, St. Mary's sponsored all the buses. They kind of pushed him out of office. So wild time then and a wild time now. So you're living a period of life that will probably give you an opportunity to tell stories for the rest of your life.
And John, when you were here, is there anything in particular you were involved in?
Yeah, I mean, I played a lot of different sports, to be honest with you. I never excelled at anything. I played a lot of things here. But most important, I had to, as part of going on to college, I did have to work every day. I used to take, 3 days a week, I used to take the train into New York City and work as a busboy at a restaurant called Stoker's. Not that I really wanted to, my family kind of pushed me into it, I had to do it, it was part of the thing. But I used some of that money to go on to college, so I think that was probably, looking back on it, an important part of getting through the school. Back then it was a lot cheaper, but money was still money. Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us here today. My name is Christine Hogan. I'm from the class of 1997. After I graduated, I went on to the University of Notre Dame. I was an American Studies major, and I specialized in American literature and American history. I worked for a few years on Wall Street, and then I went to law school at St. John's in Queens. I now have my own practice in Fort Washington. I focus mainly on businesses and nonprofits. I also do some real estate and trust and estates work. While I was here, I played lacrosse, basketball, and I was a news editor on the paper, and I was very involved in community service. I will say that the friends I made here at St. Mary's are still my closest friends to date. We're all turning 40 this year, and 8 of us went away on a vacation to Turks and Caicos a couple months ago. So it's a really special place that you're not making memories just for right now, you're making memories for a lifetime. And so my advice would be to stay in touch with the friends you're making here today.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, good morning. I'm Paul Milo. I'm the old man of who grew up here. This is my second time doing this. I was invited 10 years ago. And I can't believe 10 years have passed, but I also can't believe that half a century has passed since I was here. But my family moved not too long after we graduated to Northern Virginia. And I was at the University of Maryland for a year and a half, 2 years, studying physics. And then I quit school for a while, but I wound up graduating from George Mason University with an undergraduate degree in economics and a graduate degree in economics. And my career took some very interesting twists and turns, but and I don't want to bore you with that, but actually 28 years ago, next in a couple of weeks on April 1st, I started the company I'm with now. We're a small systems integration firm. We're doing energy work now also, but a lot of the work we did was with the Defense Department, and it took me to places that I never thought I'd be. We've been in other continents over the years, the Pacific Rim, Europe, Asia, and Southwest Asia, Africa. We've been to, and of course across the U.S. And so it's kept me busy, it's kept me traveling. This year I'll probably hit 4.5 million miles on United Airlines lifetime. So it's been an interesting time. And again, it was a little risky starting something on your own, but like I said, it's taken me places, and I've done things that I never thought I'd be able to do. So it's been very interesting. As far as Sean, your question about something remarkable I did when I was here, over over 50 years, it kind of all blends in. I will say this: for 4 years, I had the time of my life here. I remember things that happened that long ago, like they happened yesterday. I was involved in I commuted. We lived in Uniondale, so it was tough after school. It was get the bus unless somebody was around to take us home. But I was involved in a lot of the intramural stuff, some of the clubs and everything, but just, got here regularly for basketball games and other track events. Other sports events like track events. But nothing really remarkable, just had a good time. It was all part of the 4 years I was here.
Thank you.
And it is a pleasure to be here. So.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Just to reiterate what Sean said, ask questions, because the more questions you ask, the later you get to go back to class and you get to go to work. So, I'm Tara Vincent. I graduated class of 1995, and since graduation, I went to Hofstra University. It was a bit of a sore subject because I was supposed to go to the University of San Diego, but my parents were not happy with me going that far, so they bribed me very well to stay close to home 1 year, and I did, and I loved it, and I stayed, so they won. But I graduated from Hofstra University with business management degree because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, so it seemed really safe. I was convinced I wanted to be a chiropractor or a massage therapist. Maybe I'm not going to convince me otherwise. But I'm happy with my career choice because which I realized later on, it allowed me to kind of do a little bit of everything, and a lot of everything I did. After I graduated, I worked for a broadcast company. None of you guys will remember, but it was a popular radio station back here at Entertainment Complex. But it was located in Long Island, and I was there for 10 years, and did everything from radio station events to trafficking the VJs and DJs to we bought an entertainment complex in Plainview. We did concerts from national artists to kid shows to weddings. And then they bought a newspaper. So I stayed a little bit longer after the newspaper, and I learned all about printing. From there, I left because I just couldn't do anything else after 10 years. And I started working for a online travel agency. So, which seems kind of archaic and crazy, but we have currently, after 26 years, I think there are 12, we have 35,000 independent travel agents selling travel from their home, and some of them make close to $1 million a year. They're really good ones with it. So some of them do it part-time. So I am vice president of marketing again, so marketing came in handy, and my career active. I do a little bit of everything, from IT to programming to print to digital to events, massive amount of events. And that's it. I get to travel, of course, which is always nice. And I get to work a mile from my house, which is even nicer. So I guess the best advice I can say, a lot of actually these guys kind of already said it, but in high school, do everything. Get involved in everything, try everything. I think I did almost everything from yearbook to volleyball, basketball to cross country, which was terrible, and I still hate it. Just try everything because you will form different connections with a lot of your classmates that maybe you wouldn't have spoken to or been friendly with normally. And I think, Chrissy actually said it, but my bridal party, half my bridal party, was as much fun as I had in college, and as many best friends that I had in college. My bridal party was my high school classmates. And that was the majority of it. And my husband was a St. Mary's alumni as well. He was a year older than me. I didn't really know him in high school. I met him 12 years later. I found out he went to high school and I was convinced he was lying and he went to St. Mary's, but he did. So it all comes back. The memories you guys are forming, these things you guys are doing now, it is all kind of helping you become who you will be. You might not know who that is now, that's what I'm saying.
Great, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mark Tilton, class of 86. After graduation, I went to Mount St. Mary's College and National University down in Ellensburg, Maryland, and I studied business and finance. After college, I went to work at Sloan Care in Kansas Center in the city for a little bit, and then transferred to Morgan Stanley. Worked on at Morgan Stanley until about 1997, and I decided to change careers drastically and went to fire in the city of New York. I kind of had a love being a volunteer for Washington. Took a test for the city as a group, and decided to make a change. I've been on the job for 22 years in April. I decided to address the company for Queens. It's a special operations unit. We do a lot of cool stuff. We scuba dive, and bridges, in addition to fires. I'm a dive instructor as well. A member of the FEMA USAR task force team. Deployed to Puerto Rico for Hurricane Maria, so I rode out the storm down there, so it was pretty interesting, pretty crazy. Got to help a lot of people up down there. I live out in South Old now. My wife and 3 kids. I have a son in college and 2 daughters who are in high school. And I guess my one great memory being I was involved in sports. I played lacrosse for all 4 years. I ran cross country in the fall, across the spring. I was on the 87 World Island Championship team. Played with a bunch of great guys. A couple of them a year ahead of me. They were all Hall of Fame cross country. One's the head coach at Hopkins. And the other guys going down to great schools. So that was a great experience. I went to Harrison. Sophie it goes quick. Some of my best friends are from St. Mary's. I still keep in contact with quite a few. Excuse me. Going to my wedding party as well. It was a great 4 years. It was different back then. We were segregated. We had boys on one side and girls on the other schools. It's a little different. Now you guys are covered. But it was still a great experience, a lot of good friends, and enjoy it while it lasts as it goes quick.
Thank you, Brian. So one of the questions that we asked of our alumni to think about before they came here was what one life lesson or faith lesson resonates with them. So Tara used the word fierce in her response. And so fierce can have lots of definitions. So I wanted to get a sense, Tara, from you, what fierce means to you and how it might apply to somebody who's a junior in high school and their approach.
Sure. I can't remember exactly what I wrote, but I remember vaguely what I wrote because, fierce is, as silly as it sounds, it's something that I live every part of my life by. So it really, I think my advice is whatever you are passionate about, do it fiercely. And what that means is really just throw your whole self into it. And you may realize halfway through when it comes to picking college, career choice, boyfriend, girlfriend, even your family though, you may realize, halfway through how you could do it better, how you could have done it better, or maybe when it comes to, not family, but that it's something that you put your all into and, it's not for you. So I think that's my only advice, just throw yourself into it and just smother anything you think you want to do, and just do it fiercely. Because I think you will live with no regret also, and you will learn something about yourself every day. So I do everything fiercely. Actually, it's funny, this is actually part of my sister's speech at my wedding, and she kind of nailed it before I knew that was my word. But I do everything fiercely. I love fiercely, I fight fiercely, I work fiercely, and that's just, to me, that's just, no matter what, it's a great way to just live by. Just do whatever you're passionate about fiercely.
Thank you. So Christine, you talked about planning your work and then work your plan. So to me, that sounds a little bit like time management, which I think is probably really important, especially as they go into college. You want to talk a bit more about that?
Sure, absolutely. So I suffer from a severe case of procrastination. I work well under pressure, that if I have all the time in the world, it never gets done. So my father, who is a huge mentor for me, always used to say, you have to plan your work and then work your plan. And I have to remind myself of that, especially when I'm working with multiple clients who have multiple needs and maybe priorities at any given time. For me, I start each day with my planner open and I write my to-do list. I still do it the old-fashioned way with pen and paper because I love crossing it out and seeing that it's done. But it's really kind of each day assessing what can you get done today, what needs to get done, and kind of setting priorities in time management. And I'm sure I suffer from something that many people in this room might, which is, the internet time stuff, which is just eating up so much of my valuable time. So for me, I use a timer on the computer just for each task, and also if I need some time to just goof around on social media or something. But I certainly, this is not my nature to do that. I am not so regimented, so I really have to remind myself to do that, so that phrase kind of helps me stay in line.
Right. And you also, in your faith lesson, referred to the prayer of St. Francis and service.
Yes, so the prayer of St. Francis is very meaningful to me, and if you look at the words, it's all, make me a channel of your peace. And for me, that means, how can God use me to make the world a better place? And He can use each one of us in this room. And I think, work and your career is one thing, but we're all on this earth to make it a better place and to make relationships with people. I take a little bit of a different, I don't think anyone would call me fierce. And so also when I'm thinking of that phrase and kind of what we're here to talk about today, if you're more like me, who may not, someone wouldn't describe me as passionate or fierce. They would describe me as even keeled and, kind of level. For me, trying to find a career, thinking about what is my passion, got me lost, because that's a hard bar. If you're someone like me who's kind of just in the middle somewhere even. So kind of focusing on the prayer of St. Francis and service to others, and for me that was my standard, is how at each day can I feel satisfied that I have served others through God.
Thank you. So, Brian, in your line of work, I see a lot of things, and you talked about appreciating life, not taking things for granted, trusting in God and having faith. But what is, maybe just expand on that a little bit, and how, because to me that would really apply to somebody who is in your position.
Yeah, as you can imagine, I come across strangers when they're not having the best day. Whether it be car accident, fire, drowning accidents. So sometimes our interventions are successful, sometimes they're not. And over the course of 20-something years, it tends to take toll on you. But if I found that you know, I go home at night, I look at my kids, I look at my wife. We do kind of live far out from the city, so it's kind of going out to a different environment. And I just appreciate everything when I get home. And, you know, I'm not a big religious guy, but that almost 2-hour drive home, you know, there's been times on some bad days where we spend it doing prayer on the way home, and thanking God that you know, you either able to help somebody or praying for their family. So faith is pretty important. It's an important thing to have, especially when you know some people have the best at it.
Thank you. John, talk a little bit about balancing lots of things happen in life, right? Family, work, careers, and you talked about you don't have to get you won't necessarily get an A in all those things, right? So keep it all a little bit in perspective, right? And actually, when you talk about perspective, you also talked about the value of weekly mass. Right? So maybe just talk a little bit about both of those things.
Sure. I think, Sean, what I was really referring to is that the folks that are in this room now in another year or two are going to be so focused on college, and then right after that careers. And as Paul mentioned before, it seems like yesterday he was here, and that's the way life is. And what will happen is that you'll face these challenges. You're going to be so focused on your schoolwork, first getting into school, getting to the school in there, and then onto the careers. And what you really have to do is step back and make sure that life is a balancing act. And there are times where you want to stay focused on that, and there are other times where you want to step back and really take it all in, enjoy your family, recreation. Obviously, the foundation that you picked up here at St. Mary's is something that's going to be very, very important. And what I referenced, Mass, is that 1 hour a week I have found over my almost 45 years having left here, was that it's the 1 hour that it makes you stop and put things into real perspective. And what I mean by that is that any success you have, as we learned here at St. Mary's, it's basically almost, it's granted to you. You've worked for some of it, but it is a gift that you've been given. And what the faith teaches you is you got to get some of that back. And it's hard to do that in the early years of your careers. It comes probably a little bit later. But you got to think about that. As I said, it's a very, very challenging world out there. Fortunately, you folks are very well prepared for it. I think St. Mary's, again, will have laid that foundation for you. But it is, and there'll be times where it'll seem like impossible tasks out there in front of you. But as you get there and you'll meet them and you'll succeed, and then you'll take on the next one. But try to keep that balance. It really, really is important. Many of you will want to have families, and how much time can you spend on your career versus your family? Do you miss those years when the kids are young and you're traveling and doing things like that? So you really, really have to focus on it, and I think it'll make that experience and life that much more enjoyable for you.
Great, thank you, Joe. Yes.
What was the greatest failure you experienced in life, and how did you overcome?
A little bit louder.
Greatest failure you've ever experienced in life, and how did you overcome?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great news. Anybody in particular, or can we just?
John?
John?
Well, you look back at mistakes, that you may have made. I find in the career that I chose, I'm in the beverage alcohol industry I mentioned before today. And so that's an interesting phenomenon because it's an important part of our culture, and at the same time, there's tremendous social responsibility required for that. And what I mean by it is that a lot of young people like yourselves are going to go on to college, and you're going to be experiencing alcohol and using alcohol. Some of you may even encounter that obviously in high school. And what happens, what you do today and some of the things you'll do in college, those have consequences for the rest of your life. And I think I've had it as part of my career. We're very heavily focused on social responsibility and making sure that people under 21 understand the risks and what can happen if things like alcohol are abused by young folks. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say that we didn't make our share of mistakes, because we did. And I think, but it's something that I focus on today very heavily, having had 4 kids go through college. And believe me, there were times where I had to deal with some of that as well. So you learn from that, and but when you get into a position where maybe you can have an impact, we try to do that. So that's something that I saw mistakes made. I made some of them myself back at that time, and you want to make sure that you don't make them again. And some of the people, the young people that you have an opportunity to speak to, recognize that as well.
Paul, do you want to talk about the same thing, maybe address failure, but also a little bit about what you focused on in your remarks here, which was having a moral compass.
Yeah,
That might be a place to answer it.
as far as failure is concerned, I'd like to turn that a little bit, and I don't want to get too ridiculous about this, but in terms of faith, I lost my sister to cancer in 1997, and then I lost my wife to cancer 7 years ago. These are two major losses in my life. And it was the faith that I had in what I was taught here that I think has made that all bearable. I mean, I go back to Brian saying the bad days that he's had. And it was interesting in both situations, friends, relatives, that those that I said didn't have faith and those that did, and how they responded. I listened to people like how unfair life was, and I look at it as, especially with Kathy, we had 31 amazing years together. So I honestly believe that faith moves mountains. I know that sounds corny. I believe faith is what gets you through the rough times. It's so easy to get through the easy times. It's the rough times where it really pays off. As far as what I wrote in the moral compass, and I look at this, and I kind of look at what you're going to be going through more through the eyes of my kids. My son's 30, my daughter's 34, so they're a lot more current than I was. But you all are in a very structured environment here, and I don't mean that in a negative way by any stretch of the imagination. It's focused, it's structured. You've got a rigorous program here. And I'd be willing to bet that you all come from a relatively structured environment at home, just by virtue of the fact that your parents are going out of their way to make sure you're here and getting this education. More so than ever, certainly more so than 50 years ago when I left here and went off to college. You're going to go from this structured environment, where you've got help, you've got guidance, you've got boundaries, to college where I can promise you today there is absolutely no boundaries, structure. It's just totally wide open. And I think the most important thing I took out of this school was, as corny as it sounds, a moral compass. An understanding of what's right and wrong, of who you are. And I think, especially for y'all, that's going to be critical. Again, there's so much that you're inundated with that we didn't even imagine back then. And you've got to deal with that. And I think what you were taught here is, if you heed it, is going to serve you very, very well.
Thank you. Tara,
Yeah, similar to what everybody's saying, but I'm going to burst a little bit of a bubble here. You are going to fail at some point in your life. You're going to make a mistake at some point in your life. That's human nature, and we all, I think, can agree that we made mistakes and we failed at something. We wish we could do something better, but at the end of the day, I can speak for, I don't regret any of it because it got me here, and it got me to who I am, and it got me this life, whether, somebody thinks it's not good enough, or, somebody is envious of it. It got me here, so I don't regret any of the failures that I made or mistakes that I made. I wish I could have done things differently. I wish I could take things back, absolutely. But you're going to fail at some point. The thing is to really know how you come back from that failure. So, tell us about learning from it so you don't do it again. Part of me really feels bad for this entire new generation coming up because, unfortunately, some of your mistakes don't live in a bubble anymore. There's social media. We never have to deal with that. The phones we had were not even phones, they were like beepers, they were pagers, and you had to figure out ways to write a word using numbers upside down or rotary. So, the world you guys live in is very different. So the mistakes and failures that you're going to make are very different. And they live somewhere permanently. So I think my only advice is when it comes to, let's talk about social media, is don't do anything you're not going to be proud of. Whatever you do, whether it's on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is, just make sure whatever you're putting out there, that it's something you are always going to be proud of. And I tell my niece, if you're going to put something out there, if you're not going to show it to your mom or your grandmother, whatever, then it's probably not okay to put out there. So it's probably not something you're really proud of. So that's, my only advice when it comes to, failures and mistakes and, social media.
We're going to make mistakes, and it's how we learn from it. They're going to make you a better person. You learn from your mistakes. And again, I don't just remind kids social media is very dangerous. You can really hurt yourself with it. You can alter your future by putting stuff on social media, but you got to learn from that. We make it the great era, but again, you're going to make mistakes, but we learn from them because that's the only way to grow.
You have to realize that there's always more to learn. And there's always somebody you can learn from. Even if you're at the top of the organization, never stop learning, never stop looking for people to learn from. And those people that you can learn from are often, below you in the chain. When I was starting off as a lawyer, the people I learned most from were the partners I was working for as the paralegals, who really taught me the foundations I need to be a successful attorney, and I'm still close with most of them. So it's look above you, look below you, look beside you. You can learn from everyone in your circle.
I want to just, on social media, one of the things that, again, back in the day, things stayed local. They don't anymore. I've found that, especially if you've got a little bit of a temper, you're ready to explode, somebody just stop and think for a minute. Let it go, and then come back and, after you've got a little bit of time to think about it. I know that when I'm really annoyed at somebody or something, I want to fire off an email. I like the email before I put the address. I don't want to accidentally hit the send button, and I want to go back and review what I said. You really want to say this. I think that's incredibly critical today, especially with Twitter, Instagram, all that. Once it's out there, you read about stuff all day long where people pull stuff back, you can't pull stuff back. It's there. And I think that it's just, in a world where everything happens in a split second, it's good to take a deep breath.
John, what is your quality of data?
First, I think commend the young man with that question. It's a great question. And I think today I would say compassion and respect. It's amazing. Here we are in 2019, and you pick up a newspaper, and we're seeing stories and reports that go back to 60s and 70s, and just in terms of respecting each other in the United States, whether it's race relations and things like that, it's shocking. But as I look out in the audience today, I'm confident that this is a group that can change things in the United States. And we have a lot of things that need to be changed. We have not come as far along as we would have thought, at least in our generation, having moved through the 90s, early 2000s, and now where we are today. And so all of you today, as I look out here, it is refreshing to see a group like this. And so the United States is really yours, and it's up to you to make it what it can be and should be. And I think it always starts with compassion and respect. All of you will be in different positions in your life. Most of you will have had this foundation and the benefit of pursue. I said there isn't many people who want to college. There are other people in the United States that won't have that opportunity, and so you got to keep that in mind. And where you can give back, you want to do that, and that will make not only the people around you better off, but even yourself. So that's really what I see.
Sarah?
I feel like I kind of said a lot in my last one. I guess what characteristic, I mean, you guys all hit on some really good ones, and I don't want to repeat any of them, but I think the best is just balance. You know, so throughout your entire college life and your career, it is just balance everything that you can do. I don't mean just workload, but balance how far you push yourself to how far you sit back and, you know, like Chris said, like learn from something, learn something from somebody new, or whatever it is. So I think, I don't know, I think balancing, you know, your family, balancing your faith in there, making sure that that's always an equal balance, balancing your career, balancing how hard you work, balancing how hard you have fun. So I think that is just, you know, learning your own balance and constantly managing it, I think. But everybody else has some really good ones here.
I have another question. Any questions? I think that, and we don't have too much time left, so my thoughts on an answer, you have an answer, right? That social media we talked about, and also keeping an open mind to opportunities. So, like Brian, you had a couple of different steps before you ended up joining the fire department, right? Which are very different steps. Sloan Kettering, Morgan Stanley, and the fire department. So, maybe talk about if each of you could maybe touch on, or if there's another topic that you really want to convey to them before we dismiss it, that would be great.
Well, in terms of my steps, as my mother, she'll tell you, it was crazy. She's still pulling hair out. 4 years of college, I'm fine. But networking is huge, very huge, in any profession. The more you put yourself out there, the more you interact with other people. You know, we just built a network this morning. You're going to have, I mean, now I have somebody in travel, lawyers, and the beverage industry that I've met. And even in my profession, the networking, you know, it's a little different, but I've met guys from all over the country who do different specialties in emergency service work. Networking is definitely huge asset.
Christine? Either networking, being open to opportunities, or something else you want to need to ask?
Sure. Just building on the networking, I think your biggest asset in networking is your reputation. And another thing my father taught me was when you make those mistakes that are inevitable, your reputation is kind of what carries you through the day. So in my business, it's all personal services, so I build personal relationships with each of my clients. And you know, when we hit a stumbling block, it's really that rapport and trust that I have built with my clients that kind of get me over, you know, some rough patches if there are any. And you know, we build a relationship together. So it's not just about collecting business cards or linking in with 1 million people on LinkedIn. It's really building relationships and building that trust and having face-to-face meetings, especially in this day and age, or picking up the phone and actually talking to somebody. I think those human elements can't be understated, and that helps create a working network, not just a network for show. It's really a network that starts to work for itself, and it really compounds itself. So every day I get a call from someone who got my name from somebody, who got my name from somebody else. So it's really your reputation that builds and sustains your network.
Tara, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so how many of you actually out here right now actually know what you want to do, like what career you want to go in or what you're going to graduate? All right, even that's pretty impressive. So, networking and practice in your elevator, those are all words that probably like, feedback, right? What does it mean? And it won't really mean anything until probably you're older, but networking is extremely important. And you're kind of doing it now, honestly, just in a very different way for a very different reason. But it's very important, and like Christine said, it's your reputation and how respected you are actually are things that help you, network. But networking, if you ask me, boil it down, it's just being a good person, period, end of story. That's all it is. So it's being a good listener when somebody is telling you about what they're doing, what they want to do, a problem they're having. It's asking good questions. When somebody reaches out, and asks you for help, you try and help them, career-wise, personal-wise. That's networking. When you're talking to somebody, it's funny, whenever I talk to somebody, I'm always thinking, even somebody that I just met or somebody in business, I'm always thinking, all right, I'm listening to them and I'm listening to what they're saying, what they're maybe not saying, but, how can I help you? Like, how can I do something to help you? Even if it's, hey, I know somebody that you might be able to talk to, whatever. That's networking. So I think, again, it's just really being a good person. And it is very important. Learning those skills now is really important for your career in the future.
We have a couple more minutes. John, let me just address that. What party message would you like to give to our students?
What I would say, just quick on networking, how the importance of that. Referrals, I think last statistic I saw, something like 80% of jobs today are secured through referrals, meaning that it's rare that someone just sends a resume out and gets a job. Typically, in the company that we run, out of 105 employees, anytime there's an open position, the first thing we do is we put it out to the employees and ask them, do you know anybody, friends, relatives that might be interested in you? Most people tend to only refer people that they feel confident about. So the whole part about social media, utilizing social media to network, to stay close to each other, to help each other is a huge part of it. And that's the same as we talked about in life in general. Don't forget the people that are sitting to your left and to your right, in front and in the back, because there's a good chance if you want, you can keep that connection for the rest of your lives, and it can come and it can help you, and it may help your children one day. I mean, it's not uncommon to pick up the phone and call friends or whatever, if kids coming out of school, hey, do you have any internships or anything like that? And that's the way it works. It's all about that. It's about, and today with social media, that's the big advantage you have. You're able to stay connected, where for us it's a little bit more challenging. And my only parting, thought on it is that, as I said before, you've been given a great opportunity coming out of St. Mary's. It's a great school with a great reputation, and as you embark on life, it's going to be a lot of fun. But remember your roots. Remember what sort of got you there, and keep that balance. As I said, math just happens to be the one thing that I was able to keep for many, many years, is that 1 hour a week. And no matter all the success and everything like that, you get grounded pretty fast when you think about where you are. You're that, like one drop of sand is beach of billions and billions of particles out there, and that's sort of the way life is. You just got to keep it in perspective.
Yeah, just real briefly on networking. I think simply put, there's no monopoly on good ideas and perspective. And networks is a great way to get a feel for how other people are thinking, looking at a problem in a different way. So we would have just take a minute. When you asked the question about who knows what career they want to go on, there wasn't a whole lot of hands that went up. And I want to say there's nothing wrong with that. And don't fret over it. Just a couple of pieces of advice real quick. In school, when you get off to college, I think there's a couple of important things. One is take some sort of quantitative analysis class. The ability, whether it's logic or something like that, the ability to analyze the problem is critically important in just about anything you go into. Second, I notice people don't roll their eyes. Creative writing, English lessons. I cannot tell you in my career how many geniuses, and I'm not making this up, how many geniuses I know that cannot get their ideas expressed and across to somebody else. It's just critically important. And lastly, if you all were going to leave here and go to work, you'd all be working a 40-hour work week, just like the rest of us. kind of approach college from that perspective, and please, believe me, don't do as I do as I say. You'll all be taking somewhere near 12 to 15 hours of classes, which means which means you'll be in the classroom 12 to 15 hours a week, which means you have anywhere from 28 to 24 hours to fill in a 40-hour work week. If you approach it that way and use that time out of the classroom, you'll have plenty of time for socializing and the weekends and what have you, and I guarantee you, everybody will be doing very, very well. It's a disciplining process. Like I said, if you're going to go to work, you should be doing it anyway.
Well, thank you, everyone. That was a great panel discussion, and we really benefited from a lot of your insights. One of the things I was thinking when you were talking, especially toward the end there, where Paul said, consider your college career a 40-hour work week. It's very important to use your time well and take advantage of the opportunities that come your way. I think it's something that many of us only see in retrospect. The amount of time that you have in life is limited. It's a treasure. It's a finite treasure. And it's important to make the best use of it as you can. One of the greatest thinkers of the 19th century was John Henry Newman. He's soon to be Saint John Henry Newman. Will be canonized in the next couple of years. But he said something that always stayed with me. He said, don't fear dying. Fear never having lived. Fear never having realized your potential or used the gifts that God has given you. And it's a great benefit, it's a great privilege to have these people who come back and give their time freely to you, to give you the benefit of their experience. That's something that many of us take for granted. But when you have people who have gone through a large part of their lives and will come back and tell you what they learned, it's a great thing to be able to glean something of that wisdom for yourselves so that you can live your life better by virtue of having benefited from their advice. Last thing I'd like to mention is you're never alone. The thing that all of us as human beings probably fear more than anything else is to be alone. No one to help us, no one that cares about our direction. All of you have someone, probably more than one, person in your life who cares about you. Certainly these people came back to care about you and give you the benefit of their advice. But remember that you're not alone, and the best friend you have is God, the Creator. So everybody here has said that prayer and taking some time, as John said, once a week, to reflect and gain perspective in your life and to keep forging that relationship with God will get you through life. And it will help you to be successful. Successful as a human being, as a child of God, as a good son and daughter, in the future, a wife, a husband, good professionals. So all of that is in your favor if you take the advice that you're being given. So let's give them a big hand for all that they're doing.